I'm going to give you some prominent names in sports. Michael Jordan, Peyton Manning, LeBron James, John Elway, Kirby Smart, Phil Mickelson, Drew Brees, Alex Rodriguez, Jim Boeheim, Jay Wright, Kevin Garnett, Dirk Nowitzki, Jim Harbaugh. You're probably thinking, where am I going with this? All of those names I listed were prominent, legendary figures in sports that were once known as guys who can't get over the hump. In other words, if you had these guys on your team, you were known in mainstream sports media as you automatically can't win the big game. You were that team. Every single name I listed here has either been traded or fired on Twitter or SportsCenter, whatever the most prominent sports outlet was for their respective eras. And contrary to popular belief at the time, guess what happened? Every single name I listed got over the hump. Ryan Day is now in that category. And this is a message to Ohio State fans that clamored for Ryan Day to get fired. You know who you are. I know some of them. I know a good bit of them, actually. Patience is the most underrated virtue in sports nowadays. What do I mean by that? Well, millennials and Gen Xers will tell me if you turn on SportsCenter in 2004, the first thing you'll see is Peyton Manning being talked about like he was Dak Prescott. Michael Jordan was known as the guy who couldn't get over the hump with the Pistons. He was known as the guy who couldn't get past the bad boys. Guess what? They both stuck with those guys. Paid off. You know how long it took John Elway to win a Super Bowl? 15 years. We saw 4 Summer Olympic Games happen in that span. We saw from MLK Day being officially declared a national holiday in 83 to 97 NASA landing on the moon. We saw all of that happen. That's how long it took. Imagine if Denver, after they lost 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, from 1986 to 1989, this is my point, was like, oh, well, that seals it. He can't win the big game. Well, guess we got to move on. Time to find another quarterback. That narrative is that. You know how differently the Broncos' legacy would be talked about, how Mike Shanahan would be talked about, people in the Broncos front office, Elway, you name it. And the reason why I say all of this is because, man, Aaron Rodgers had a freaking awesome quote that I'm going to use. Quote, here we go. You should never take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. Here's my overarching point. Ohio State did a great job of this. Ohio State could have gotten impatient. They could have listened to the fans, who were incredibly underqualified to give out fair advice, and they could have fired Day for the PR. Guess what? They didn't. And here we are. Ohio State, you are on the mountaintop. And if the Ohio State front office, I guess we could call it nowadays, the AD, listened to the fans, a lot of people would have probably transferred. Day would be fired. You'd lose the locker room, and you probably wouldn't have a national championship by now. And here we are. Here we are. And the core reason why I opposed the Ryan Day discussion so much is because it wasn't we're firing Ryan Day. We want to fire Ryan Day because we haven't won the big game. It was because the narrative shifted to he should be fired because he can't win the big game. My argument to that is, sports fans, haven't we made this mistake before? Haven't we made this mistake with Peyton Manning? With LeBron James? Remember when LeBron James had that 2011 finals and lost to the Celtics with the Cavs? He was known as, the guy, he can't get it done in the playoffs. He doesn't have that killer instinct. Well, he's a 4-time champion. Peyton Manning is a 2-time Super Bowl champion. We've made this mistake before, and yet, to Ohio State fans, we haven't learned. Ryan Day can win the big game because Ryan Day is one of the best coaches in college football. Ooh, crazy take. You know Ryan Day has the highest win percentage of any FBS college football coach since 1953? I don't care if you started on second base or started on third base. You know how hard that is? Ryan Day is arguably one Marvin Harrison Jr. injury away or one missed kick away against Georgia from being known as the best current coach in the sport. And Ohio State fans, those clamoring then there's a lot of you. To fire Ryan Day because he can't win the big game. Again, I say, look where you are right now. You're at the mountaintop because the Ohio State AD went against what you were begging for. And to that I say, my final arching message, and yes, this is becoming a Ryan Day segment because he's dealt with a lot of criticism. He deserves it. My final arching message is think before you speak. Think before you speak, because not only is it like the football aspect of it, but the morality of it too. These are families in livelihoods at stake that we're talking about. If you say to fire Ryan Day because he can't win the big game, you better have a valid reason for it. You should. And what is that valid reason? Is it there? Because I don't see it. Truth be told, I never really have seen it. Because if you want Ohio State to make a decision that impacts families, that impacts livelihoods, you better have a valid reason for it. And yes, there are some points where coaches just aren't getting the job done, into which I say it's probably better for both parties and both sides. This one, Ryan Day has, again, the best win percentage of any college football coach since 1953. He's getting the job done. This isn't week in and week out failure. This is the obsession with one game, and I get it, man. The Ohio State-Michigan game, it's a huge deal. I won't undersell that. But to say you fire your coach because of one game ignores the context of all the other 13 games, 14 games or so that were played this season. Yes, this became a Ryan Day segment because I think he deserves it. Patience is one of the most underrated virtues in sports nowadays. And not listening to people, not taking advice from people. I'm not going to say not listening, not taking advice from people who you would not take criticism from. Flat out. And Ohio State did that, and guess what? Because of it, they have a national championship, and they are on top of college football.